I'd like to walk you through some photos from 11 years ago. It was March 24th, 2007, today being April 29th, 2018. So, again, this was 11 years ago. This is Evergreen Cemetery. The staging area that was just removed is over here to this side, screen left. You can see that they used to leave concrete vault liners here on site and just keep the wood piled up because they had a service almost every day over there. This is, there's now a road that comes down through this area here that's been paved. This area back in here is all fill. So you can see that housekeeping wasn't as good as it is today. A lot of this plywood was just broken fragments. When they dig a grave, they would lay these boards on the sides of it and then put the plywood on top until they came and did the setup to prevent people from stepping inside of it. Again, this is a video that talks about the dumping, the placement of soils on this land without any permits, without any plan, and some of the things that were buried underneath the soil. Every time you put a concrete vault in the ground, you displace 2.2 cubic yards of compacted soil. Of course, that expands when you dig it up. The practice then and the practice now was just to take that soil and spread it out on low-lying areas and create a level place in order to not have to pay to haul it off like you do at Austin Memorial Park. You can see when I walk down the edge here, you can see the amount of soil that's been added in here to create that level space. The problem is there's a lot of trash and things dumped in there, not necessarily by city crews. We'll see some that's by city crews, but by citizens who just looking for a free dump site, and the material was never removed. So here's a photo. You see this white object down in here, and you wonder, well, what could that be? It was actually a concrete vault that got broken. They couldn't use it, so it was just pushed off to the side and off the side of the cliff and eventually covered up. Every time a tree limb or big branches fell, all that material was just pushed over to the edge and then covered up with dirt. All that stuff will decay over time and the dirt settles. This is not flat land that's been there for years. It is a dump site. You can see where every time it rains, the water would just cave down through here. Again, these sheets of plywood would end up everywhere around the site. The soils piles filled in ravines. You can see the spoils over here, and then this area over here. Again, this is March 24th of 2007, where they would just level things off. The problem is this is part of the old Highland Park Cemetery. We have over 500 bodies that are unaccounted for. Here you see a microwave oven that somebody just dropped off the side of the hill. Most likely was just covered up and buried up. It wasn't the contractor's job to fish this stuff out, and it just got buried. So now future generations, 11 years later, the city may be looking at this space to expand the cemetery, and it's going to be a dump site. Here you have, look at this twisted metal thing. I don't know if it's part of a car or what that is, but you can see it was dumped over the side and eventually just covered up. This is railing from like guard railing from alongside a road. For years, the city would just go over there and dump things. This, I think, is part of a bedpost frame or something over here. But this is what is filling in a lot of this area. In the future, if you attempt to use this space, you're going to find trash and debris just a few feet underneath the existing grade. Those sheets of plywood can end up just getting tossed and buried. Here's memorial markers down in here. This is granite. I don't think it's too thick to be countertop. It might have just been a base for a stone that broke, and they just threw it over here. Future generations will be digging graves and find this stuff and wonder what the hell happened. So now from March, now we're into December. of the same year, December of 2007, you can see that the things are over here. And now they've started flagging out this area where they're going to expand into. That used to be a dump site. It was a big tree that they had to take down. This was the point, what I call the point. It shows up on the photos. You can see the amount of soil that was brought out there and just moved into location. And then eventually it was just pushed over the edges to cover everything up. This is an exhaust pipe from a car that was down laying on the lower spot. Here you can see the metal frames, the foam and the plastic for old flower sprays that were used in funerals, and they were just picked up and thrown over the edge, down in a ditch, to be covered up with spoils. This is a mattress. Now the high area is about 15 feet above us, and this is a plateau. This is part of the old Highland Park Cemetery, and this is clearly a mattress that was dumped down in there and just slowly degrading apart. On all these terraces, there are evidence of trash. Some of it from the city from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, before they actually started developing this area. Here you see a bunch of concrete and other things that are just dumped off here. There's going to be layers of this stuff all throughout this area. An old tire, stick and half buried in the dirt. Evidently it was a Goodyear tire. Again, back over in here, we see what looks like is a cross right here, probably a styrofoam piece, and just trash and debris up and through here. We go up to this area here. Either it's metal or wood or something, but there's just all kinds of debris that gets tossed off the side here, and it just gets covered up. Again, you can zoom in and you can see more styrofoam crosses. Here's another tire here. The stuff was all through here, and they just bulldozed it over, covered up trees and plants. This is February of 2008, and here's the little Babyland section here, and you can still see that this stuff is all over the place. Here's our concrete vault we saw earlier. Now it's winter time. All the leaves are off the tree, and a lot of the stuff just pops out. You'll find car batteries, just all kinds of trash and debris just below the surface out here. And again, there's more things have been added over this direction. You could walk down in there, there would be big holes in the ground. This is most likely a piece of plywood. Something underneath it is just degraded, or it never got covered up fully. There could be spots down in here that these are old gravesites that are finally sinking. Hard to tell what that shot is. And again, occasionally the spoils get used to level off graves. Here you can see Evergreen Cemetery in 2007. This is still a dirt road here. It wasn't paved in yet, but you can see the area where they would pile up dirt and then attempt to flatten it out in this area here. You can see the staging area here and how they're building up this whole ridge back here. This is a photo from 1969, and again, the city acquires this part in 1957. You can see how wooded it was. The old Highland Park Cemetery extended basically way up here and down through here. The only part that was ever really used was this part in here, and then a bunch of poppers buried down in here. Again, this is 1969, 4/28 of 1969. Here we are in 1978. Here's the cemetery right here. You can clearly see the first part of Evergreen here And now we've started in 1978, starting to clear this area here out. You can see the road coming in here, but you can see that this is being cleared out, and soon you're going to see this whole area here gets to start to be backfilled. Zooming in here, you can see now this is 1981. You can see the road is in place, but look at the scar here. This is all soil that has been brought in to backfill this area here. As they cleared off the trees and everything else, they just pushed it back down onto the lower parts, attempting to level it off and cover up the old Highland Park Cemetery. You can see the trails coming in this way and this way. You can see along this road here where it appears to be a nice green flat space now. It's actually all just fill, unstabilized fill. Again, 1981, March the 15th of 1981. Here's 1984. And again, it becomes very clear here in this photograph. Let me back it up a little bit so it doesn't blur out. The extent to what all this fill has just been brought in here. You can see a car here. They were just attempting to level this off so they can create more burial space, but they're doing it on top of the old Highland Park Cemetery. Again, here's the old Stiles homestead, was right about here. Here's the cemetery here. The white line represents what would have been Highland Park Cemetery. The church has a big building up here now. But you can see, even in 2007, how the city continued to fill in this area and try to level it off so they could create more burial spaces. There's actually a drainage system that comes down through here that was put in early on, but it terminates here because they've covered it up. So this whole drainage system that comes down the main street here, it comes right through this area here, and eventually drained over into this area, is null and void now. It doesn't drain into anything. It's completely plugged up. This kind of gives you an idea of the topography. Again, you can see this area here where the fill is. You can see the topography coming down this way. This is that scar when they were covering it all up to begin with. You can see the elevation from this Google shot here. This is Greenwood here. The city actually owns this little square behind Greenwood, but it's totally inaccessible due to the fact that there's the Cannon Hill Branch Creek that comes down through here. But this is actually cemetery property as well over here. There are burials down in here that washed out, that made the city put in a $200,000 block retaining wall to keep the bodies from washing out and coming downstream here. But this is all part of the old Highland Park Cemetery over in here that the city is systematically obliterating and covering up, even though this was brought to the city's attention 11 years ago. Cora Wright was behind this, and Watershed Protection told them they couldn't do it. They continue to do it today. Here's part of that retaining wall you see right in through here that's keeping in the graves from the Highland Park Cemetery that are down in this low spot. And again, you can see from this angle here, you can see the fill, and now it's filled up all the way back down through here. Part of this is backfilled, and you can see where they're trying to connect it back this way. Again, here's the wall here, and you can see that the original grade was back this way, but this is all just being backfilled to create more burial property on top of an old historic cemetery. Again, this really kind of shows how those piles of dirt were put there. Now this extends back up through here as a level playing field, but all the trash and debris that was dumped there is now buried just a few feet below the surface.